A pilot called security on a teenage boy, just for sitting in the pilot's lounge. But within minutes he discovered the boy's father had the power to end his career in a single phone call. And what happened next left the entire airport stunned. In Skyline Air, Captain Jonas Reed scanned the waiting lounge of the pilot's quarters with casual curiosity. As crew members filed in, his attention landed on a young teenager, Malik Thompson, quietly sitting on a bench, engrossed in his phone. To Jonas, something about Malik's presence felt off. His determined gaze, subtle nervous energy, it triggered a familiar but unfounded worry. Unbeknownst to him, prejudice whispered its way into his thoughts. With a mix of concern and unease, Jonas picked up the lounge phone and called airport security, requesting they come to check on the boy. As he hung up, a flutter of guilt mixed with relief swirled in his chest. Unaware of the larger story unfolding, Malik continued looking down, adjusting his grip on a well-worn backpack, completely oblivious to the suspicions swirling around him. Two uniformed airport security officers, Officer Paul Danner and Officer Tracy Okoro, strode into the pilot's lounge, their radios crackling softly. Captain Jonas Reed waved them over and quietly pointed toward Malik. "Kid's been hanging around here for a while," Jonas murmured. "Doesn't look like he belongs. Could be trouble." The officers exchanged a glance and approached Malik. "Hey son," Officer Danner said in a calm but authoritative tone, "mind telling us what you're doing here?" Malik looked up, startled. "I'm just waiting," he replied, his voice cautious. "For who?" Tracy asked, crossing her arms. "My dad," Malik answered, glancing toward the corridor. "Your dad works here?" Paul pressed, raising an eyebrow. Malik nodded. "Yes, sir." He said to wait here until he's done with his meeting. Paul and Tracy weren't convinced. They asked Malik to show identification, but the boy hesitated. His school ID was deep in his backpack, and their suspicious stares made his hands feel heavy. The officers decided to escort him to the security office to sort things out. As they led him away, Jonas Reed watched from a distance, convinced he had prevented something, though he couldn't explain exactly what. In the terminal's main concourse, David Thompson strode briskly toward the pilot's lounge, the click of his polished shoes echoing against the tiled floor. At 6'2" with a confident posture, David carried himself like a man accustomed to command. He had just finished an intense meeting with airline executives when he glanced toward the lounge and frowned. Malik was nowhere in sight. A nervous young flight attendant approached. "Sir, are you looking for your son?" she asked softly. "Yes," David replied, his voice calm but edged with urgency. She hesitated, then said, "Security took him to their office. Something about loitering." David's jaw tightened. He quickened his pace toward the security wing, his mind already running through possible scenarios. He knew how these misunderstandings could spiral, especially when the assumptions were based on appearances rather than facts. When he entered the small, glass-walled security office, Malik sat in a chair, his backpack on the floor, looking confused and embarrassed. Two officers stood nearby, arms folded. "Dad!" Malik exclaimed, relief flooding his voice. David's eyes locked on the officers. "Why?" he asked evenly. "Is my son being detained?" Officer Danner shifted uncomfortably under David's steady gaze. "Sir, we were just trying to make sure everything was in order. He was in the pilot's lounge without proper clearance." David stepped forward slowly, placing a reassuring hand on Malik's shoulder. "My son had every right to be there. I told him to wait for me." "And who exactly are you?" Officer Okoro asked, her tone still guarded. David reached into his leather portfolio and slid a sleek, embossed ID card across the desk. It bore the golden seal of the Federal Aviation Authority and his full title. David Thompson, Deputy Administrator of National Flight Operations. Okoro's eyes widened. Danner's jaw went slack. The weight of their mistake hung thick in the air. "So," David continued, his voice low but cutting, "you detained the son of the man who oversees pilot licensing, airline compliance, and," he paused for emphasis, "the safety regulations you're sworn to follow." A tense silence filled the room. Even Captain Jonas, who had quietly stepped in to observe, felt his chest tighten. This was no ordinary passenger they had mishandled. David turned slowly toward the doorway where Captain Jonas stood frozen, trying to look smaller than his crisp white uniform would allow. "You're the one who called this in?" David asked, his voice calm but layered with quiet authority. Jonas cleared his throat. I just thought it was unusual for a young man to be in the lounge alone. I was thinking about security." David studied him for a long moment, then said, Security is about facts, Captain, not assumptions. You didn't ask him a single question before summoning security. You looked at him, and made a decision based on nothing but a feeling. Jonas swallowed hard. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, David interrupted gently but firmly. And because of that, my son was treated like a suspect instead of a child waiting for his father. Malik looked between the two men, his face a mix of hurt and curiosity. Jonas dropped his gaze, guilt pressing on him like the weight of a delayed flight. Captain, David continued, in your position you're entrusted not only with people's safety in the air, but also with their dignity on the ground. Don't forget that. Jonas's lips parted, but no words came. The shame was already doing its work. Captain Jonas took a hesitant step forward, his hands clasped behind his back. Mr. Thompson. Malik. I'm sorry. I misjudged the situation. David didn't respond immediately. He kept his hand resting on Malik's shoulder, his expression calm but unreadable. Jonas continued, I thought I was protecting the lounge. I realize now that I let my own biases cloud my judgment. It won't happen again. David's eyes narrowed slightly. An apology is a start, Captain. But words without change are just noise. Jonas nodded, his cheeks burning. You're right. David glanced at Malik. Do you accept his apology, son? Malik shrugged. I guess. But it still hurt. The simplicity of that statement seemed to hit Jonas harder than anything David had said. The captain looked down, his voice low. I understand. And I'm sorry for that too. David finally released a slow breath. Captain, I don't want to see you punished. I want to see you better. Every passenger, every crew member, no matter who they are, deserves respect. If you can't remember that, you don't belong in that uniform. Jonas nodded again, the weight of the uniform on his shoulders suddenly feeling heavier than ever. Jonas walked out of the security office slowly, each step echoing in his ears. The bustling airport noise felt distant, muffled under the throb of his own thoughts. He passed the pilot's lounge, now seeing it differently. Just hours ago it was simply his space, somewhere he thought only certain people belonged. But now he saw Malik's empty chair, the forgotten magazine on the table, the faint imprint of a backpack strap on the cushion. Jonas sat down in that chair. You didn't even say hello to him, he thought. You just assumed. He imagined how Malik must have felt, being singled out, questioned, led away like a trespasser in a place where he was just waiting for his dad. Other crew members passed by, greeting Jonas with casual nods, but his replies were slow, distracted. The truth was gnawing at him. This wasn't just about one mistake. It was about a mindset. Jonas decided then that he wouldn't bury the moment under excuses. He would talk about it, own it, even if it meant admitting to his colleagues that he'd been wrong. Later that afternoon, Malik and David were preparing to leave the terminal. Malik still clutched his backpack, glancing around with the lingering wariness of someone who'd been made to feel unwelcome. As they walked toward the exit, Jonas appeared from the corridor, hat in hand. This time there was no hesitation, he walked straight up to Malik first. Malik, he said, his voice steady, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you respect. I didn't give you that earlier, but I'm giving it now. Malik studied him for a moment, surprised to hear his own name. Jonas reached into his pocket and pulled out a small enamel pin shaped like airplane wings, the kind given to special guests during flights. When I was a kid, a pilot gave me one of these and told me I belonged in the sky. I hope you'll take it, not because of what happened, but because you deserve to feel welcome anywhere in this airport. Malik's fingers curled around the pin, and for the first time that day he smiled, just a little. David gave Jonas a short nod, the kind that said, this is better. As father and son walked toward the exit, Jonas stood in the terminal watching them go, the noise of boarding calls and rolling suitcases swirling around him. He knew this moment would stick with him far longer than any flight he'd ever taken. And from that day forward, Jonas Reed never forgot the lesson. Safety begins with vigilance, but dignity begins with respect.